Invisible Emma Winters stared at the lines of code on her monitor until they blurred together. The office hummed around her, keyboards clicking, hushed conversations, the occasional burst of laughter from the marketing department across the hall. She blinked hard and refocused on the financial modeling algorithm she'd been perfecting for weeks. 2 years at Horizon Technologies, and this was her life. Endless hours in a beige cubicle, illuminated by fluorescent lights that seemed designed to drain both energy and creativity. 4 minutes, said a voice from behind her. Emma turned to find Danielle leaning against her cubicle wall, dark curls bouncing as she tilted her head toward the conference room. 4 minutes is my new record for how long Jackson Reed spent in a meeting with my team before getting that distracted look and checking his watch. At least he knows your department exists, Emma replied, pushing her glasses up her nose. I'm pretty sure he thinks the financial algorithms write themselves. Danielle rolled her eyes. Trust me, being noticed by the great and powerful founder isn't all it's cracked up to be. The man's brilliant but has the emotional intelligence of a doorknob. As if summoned by their conversation, a small commotion drew their attention to the main corridor. Jackson Reed strode through the office surrounded by 3 executives who struggled to match his pace while balancing tablets and coffee cups. At 33, Jackson had the intensity of someone twice his age, and the innovative vision that had transformed a garage startup into a tech empire worth billions in just 7 years. Emma watched him pass, his dark blue suit impeccably tailored, his focus absolute. She'd presented quarterly projections in meetings he attended exactly 4 times. Not once had he looked directly at her, though her models had saved the company an estimated $4.2 million last year alone. Earth to Emma. Danielle waved a hand in front of her face. Speaking of our illustrious leader, have you finished packing yet? Packing? Emma frowned, momentarily confused. The lake house? This weekend? The vacation you promised you'd take after working 60-hour weeks for the past 3 months? Danielle's expression was a mixture of exasperation and concern. Please tell me you didn't forget. Emma's stomach dropped. She had forgotten, completely. The annual financial review was due next week, and she'd mentally scheduled the entire weekend to refine her analysis. Your silence is deafening, Danielle sighed, perching on the edge of Emma's desk. Look, I already paid the deposit. It's 3 hours away from the city, right on Silver Lake. My cousin's place. No internet. Emma nearly choked. That's the point. You need to disconnect before you become permanently fused with your keyboard. Danielle lowered her voice. When was the last time you did something just for yourself? Something that didn't involve spreadsheets or coding? Emma opened her mouth to respond but found herself without an answer. When had she last done anything purely for enjoyment? Before Horizon? Before grad school? Fine, she conceded, surprising herself. But I'm bringing my laptop for emergencies. No, you're not, Danielle grinned triumphantly. I'm picking you up at 6 tomorrow morning. Bring hiking shoes and something other than those corporate cardigans you seem to think constitute a personality. Friday evening found Emma reluctantly packing a small suitcase. Her apartment was spotless but impersonal, more of a place to sleep between workdays than an actual home. The only photographs displayed were her college graduation and one of her parents at their 30th anniversary. No travel souvenirs, no artwork, nothing that suggested passion or interests beyond professional success. She fingered a rarely worn sundress, wondering if it still fit. At 28, Emma had once imagined a different life for herself, one with adventure and connection. Somewhere along the way, security and advancement had become her only metrics for success. When Danielle's car horn blared at 6:03 the next morning, Emma was waiting on the curb, laptop hidden in her backpack despite Danielle's prohibition. Hand it over, Danielle demanded as soon as Emma slid into the passenger seat. What? The laptop I specifically told you not to bring. Danielle held out her hand expectantly. Don't insult my intelligence. With a guilty sigh, Emma surrendered her backpack. Danielle unceremoniously transferred it to her back seat. You can have it back on Monday, she said, pulling into traffic. Consider this an intervention. The 3-hour drive took them gradually away from the city's concrete landscape into rolling countryside, then winding mountain roads. Emma's protests eventually gave way to reluctant enjoyment as Danielle's playlist filled the car and the scenery became increasingly spectacular. Silver Lake appeared suddenly around a curve, a vast expanse of shimmering water. surrounded by pine-covered mountains. The cabin sat on a small bluff overlooking the eastern shore, rustic but charming with a wide porch and windows that caught the midday light. "This is not what I expected," Emma admitted as they carried their bags inside. "What did you expect? No electricity in an outhouse?" Danielle laughed. "I said disconnected, not primitive." The afternoon passed in a blur of unpacking, exploring, and Danielle's determined efforts to prevent Emma from checking her phone every 5 minutes. By evening, they'd hiked a short trail, swam in the cool lake waters, and prepared a simple dinner that they ate on the porch as sunset painted the sky in vivid oranges and pinks. "Admit it," Danielle said, refilling their wine glasses. "This is better than spending the weekend tweaking decimal points in your projections." Emma reluctantly smiled. "It's not terrible." "High praise indeed," Danielle laughed. "Tomorrow morning I'm taking you up to Hawks Ridge for sunrise. The view is incredible." "Sunrise?" Emma groaned. "I came here to relax." "Trust me," Danielle insisted. "Some things are worth waking up for." The alarm at 4:30 a.m. felt like punishment, but 90 minutes later, standing on a rocky outcropping as the first golden light spilled over distant mountains, Emma couldn't argue with Danielle's assessment. The world spread out below them, mist rising from the lake's surface, trees catching fire with dawn's glow and absolute, perfect silence except for occasional birdsong. "Take a picture," Danielle urged, handing Emma her phone. "You need evidence that life exists outside of Horizon's walls." Emma did, but then turned the camera and caught Danielle in profile against the sunrise. Then on impulse, she handed the phone back. "Take one of me." Danielle's surprise quickly transformed into enthusiasm. "Stand over there where the light's hitting that rock." Self-conscious but strangely exhilarated, Emma moved to the spot. The morning breeze ruffled her hair, which she'd left loose instead of in its usual tight bun. She wore hiking boots with denim shorts and a simple blue t-shirt, nothing like her carefully constructed office persona. "Smile," Danielle called. "Not your corporate headshot smile. A real one." Emma laughed at the direction, and Danielle captured the moment. Emma, with sunrise light gilding her features, genuinely happy, unguarded in a way she never allowed herself to be at work. Later that evening, scrolling through the photos from their day, Emma paused on that sunrise image. Something about it caught her off guard. The person in the photo seemed like a stranger, yet more authentically herself than the reflection she saw in her bathroom mirror each morning. On impulse, she opened her neglected social media account. She rarely posted, and her profile was followed mainly by college acquaintances and a few coworkers who'd sent obligatory connection requests. Without overthinking, she uploaded the sunrise photo with a simple caption, "Remembering there's a world beyond my desk. Silver Lake sunrise." She put her phone away afterward, joining Danielle for board games and more wine on the porch, completely unaware of the ripples her small action would create. 60 miles away, in his minimalist downtown penthouse, Jackson Reed sat alone at his kitchen island, absently scrolling through his phone while half-heartedly eating takeout from a high-end restaurant. The weekend stretched emptily before him. No meetings, no crisis calls, just the familiar isolation that accompanied his success. Horizon's internal social network had recently integrated with employees' personal accounts with permission to foster community engagement. Jackson rarely checked it, finding the forced camaraderie artificial, but tonight, restless and admittedly lonely, he tapped the app. The algorithm suggested several posts, but one thumbnail caught his attention. A sunrise over mountains. Something about the colors making him pause. He tapped it and the image filled his screen. A young woman standing on a rocky outcropping, bathed in golden light. Her expression was one of genuine joy, unself-conscious and free. It took him several seconds to place her. Emma Winters. Financial Analysis Department. The recognition came with a strange jolt. He'd seen her in meetings, always professional, always serious behind sensible glasses, always prepared with data that consistently proved accurate. This was the same woman, with loose hair catching the light, laughter in her eyes, looking completely transformed from the reserved analyst who blended into the background of his company. Jackson stared at the photo longer than he'd care to admit, something unexpected stirring in his chest. He'd built his success by recognizing patterns and potential that others missed. How had he missed this? With a sudden decision, he tapped her profile, scrolling through the sparse posts from years past. professional accomplishments, a few obligatory holiday greeting. Scene Monday morning arrived with the harsh blare of Emma's alarm. The peaceful rhythm of the lake house seemed like a distant dream as she rushed through her usual routine. Hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup, a gray pencil skirt and cream blouse that were professional but forgettable, exactly as she preferred. The weekend's fresh air and disconnection had left her surprisingly energized, though, and she arrived at Horizon Technologies 15 minutes earlier than usual. The office was quiet. Only a few early birds like herself settling into their cubicles. Emma powered up her computer and immediately dove into the financial models she'd been working on before her unexpected break. 20 minutes later, she was completely absorbed, fingers flying across the keyboard as she refined variables in her algorithm. "Good morning, Emma." The deep voice jolted her from her concentration. She looked up, startled, to find Jackson Reed standing directly beside her desk, coffee cup in hand. For a moment, she could only stare. In 2 years, he had never once stopped at her cubicle, let alone addressed her by name. "Mr. Reed," she managed, reflexively straightening her posture. "Good morning. Jackson, please." He smiled, actually smiled at her. "I was hoping to catch you before the day gets chaotic. Do you have a minute?" Emma nodded, suddenly aware of her heartbeat in her ears. Had something gone wrong with her last analysis? Was there a problem with her department? "I was reviewing some of the financial projections from last quarter," he continued, casually leaning against her cubicle wall. "Your models consistently outperformed all others in accuracy. That 0.3% variance adjustment you implemented saved us from a significant overinvestment in the Singapore expansion." Emma blinked. "You noticed that?" "I should have noticed sooner," he admitted. It was exceptional work. She struggled to reconcile this version of Jackson, Reed with the distant CEO who typically swept through the office without acknowledging anyone below executive level. "Thank you," she said carefully. "It's just part of my job." "A part you do extraordinarily well." His gaze held hers steadily. "I'm putting together a special team for the Meridian project launch. We need someone with your analytical precision. Would you be interested?" The Meridian project was Horizon's most ambitious initiative yet, a revolutionary data security platform that had been kept tightly under wraps. Being asked to join that team was effectively a promotion, a recognition she'd been working toward without much hope of achieving so soon. "I'd be honored," she replied, professional mask firmly in place despite her internal shock. "Excellent." Jackson's smile widened slightly. "First meeting is Wednesday, 9 a.m. executive conference room." He pushed away from the wall, then paused. "How was Silver Lake, by the way?" The sunrise looked spectacular. Before Emma could process the implication that he'd seen her photo, that Jackson Reed somehow followed her on social media, he was already walking away, leaving a wake of confusion behind him. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout the department. Danielle appeared at her desk with 2 salads and wide eyes. "Spill," she demanded, perching on the edge of Emma's desk. "The entire floor is buzzing about Reed personally recruiting you for Meridian." "I have no idea what's happening," Emma confessed, accepting the salad. "He knew my name, Danielle. He complimented my work specifically. And mentioned your vacation spot," Danielle added, eyebrows raised. "That's the weirdest part. How did Mr. Never Sees Anyone Below VP know where you spent your weekend?" Emma lowered her voice. "I think he saw my photo." "The sunrise one you took? The one you posted?" Danielle's eyes widened. "Wait, is Jackson Reed following you on social media? Apparently through the company network?" "I don't know." Emma pushed her salad around with her fork. "It's strange, right?" "Strange doesn't begin to cover it," Danielle agreed. "The man has practically stepped over me in hallways for 3 years, and suddenly he's tracking your weekend activities and offering you promotions?" "It's not a promotion," Emma corrected, though the distinction felt hollow even to her. "Right," Danielle snorted. "Special project teams with the CEO are totally lateral moves." For the rest of the week, Emma found herself in an alternate reality. The Meridian project team consisted of just 7 people, including Jackson himself. Their Wednesday meeting lasted 3 hours, during which Jackson repeatedly asked for her input, valued her suggestions, and twice referenced her previous work as examples of the analytical rigor the project required. Most disorienting of all, he seemed to actually see her, not just as a useful resource but as a person, He remembered details from their discussions. Brought coffee to the second meeting exactly how she liked it, 1 sugar, splash of almond milk. And once, when she made a dry observation about a competitor's security flaws, he actually laughed. By Friday, Emma found herself both exhilarated by the challenging work and deeply confused by the personal attention. As she gathered her materials after their third meeting, Jackson lingered behind until they were alone in the conference room. "Emma," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant, "I was wondering if you might be willing to continue this discussion over dinner tonight. There are some aspects of the market positioning I'd like to explore further." She froze, papers half collected in her hands. "Dinner? Purely professional," he added quickly. But the restaurant setting tends to encourage more creative thinking than these conference rooms. Every professional instinct told her to decline. Office rumors were already circulating about her sudden visibility to the CEO. Dinner would only fuel the speculation, potentially undermining the respect she'd worked so hard to earn. But another part of her, perhaps the same part that had stood on that rocky outcropping at sunrise, was curious. "I suppose that would be fine," she heard herself say. "Where and when?" "Terroir at 7:30. I can send a car for you." "That won't be necessary," Emma replied, regaining some equilibrium. "I'll meet you there." The remainder of the afternoon passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. Emma texted Danielle for moral support and received a string of shocked emojis, followed by outfit advice she had no intention of following. This was a professional dinner, nothing more. Yet at 6:45, standing before her closet, Emma found herself reaching past her usual work attire for a dress she'd purchased months ago and never worn. Simple navy blue wrap style that was still appropriate but considerably less austere than her normal choices. Terroir was exactly the kind of restaurant she'd expected, elegant without being ostentatious, quiet enough for conversation, expensive enough to signal importance. Jackson was already seated when she arrived, his attention focused on a tablet. He looked up as she approached, and something flickered across his expression, surprise perhaps, or appreciation. "Emma," he stood to greet her. "Thank you for agreeing to this on short notice." "Of course," she replied, sliding into the chair a waiter held for her. "The Meridian project is a priority." Their conversation began professionally enough, discussing market strategies and security protocols. The food was excellent, the wine carefully selected. But as the meal progressed, subtle shifts occurred. Jackson asked about her background, her education, how she'd come to Horizon. Emma found herself sharing more than she'd intended. Her childhood fascination with patterns and puzzles, her graduate studies in computational finance, her quiet ambition to someday lead her own team. "You should be doing that already," Jackson observed. "Your analytical skills are wasted in a supporting role." Emma took a sip of wine, considering him. "May I ask you something directly?" "Of course, why now?" She met his gaze steadily. "I've been at Horizon for 2 years. My work hasn't suddenly improved in the past week." Jackson seemed to weigh his response carefully. "I noticed something I should have seen earlier. It made me look more closely at contributions I'd been taking for granted." "You mean my vacation photo?" Emma said, the wine perhaps making her bolder than she would normally be. He didn't deny it. "It was unexpected. I realized I knew nothing about the person behind the exceptional algorithms that have been saving my company millions." "And that bothered you?" "It did," he admitted. "I've built Horizon on the principle of recognizing overlooked potential. Yet somehow I've been overlooking people right in front of me." The honesty in his voice was disarming. For the first time, Emma saw past the CEO persona to the person underneath. Someone who, despite his success and confidence, was capable of self-reflection and acknowledgement of his blind spots. Their dinner lasted far longer than the professional discussion should have required. By the time they stepped outside into the cool night air, something had shifted between them. Not romance, exactly, but a connection neither had anticipated. "May I walk you to your car?" Jackson asked. Emma nodded, suddenly aware of how close he stood beside her. They walked in companionable silence through the restaurant's small parking area. "Thank you for dinner," she said when they reached her sedan, "and for the opportunity with Meridian." "Thank you for your insight," he replied, "and your candor. Both are rare and valuable." There was a moment, brief but undeniable, when something electric passed between them. Then Emma took a small step back, reality reasserting itself. "Good night, Jackson." "Good night, Emma," he said softly. "I'll see you Monday." As she drove home, Emma's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Professional ambition warred with personal caution. The evening had recognition the following weeks transformed Emma's professional life. The Meridian Project consumed her days, challenging her in ways her previous role never had. The small team worked intensely, often late into evenings, building something truly revolutionary. At the center of it all was Jackson, whose brilliant mind and driving vision pushed them all to exceed their own expectations. Their connection deepened through the shared work. Nothing inappropriate had occurred since their dinner. Jackson maintained professional boundaries during office hours, but something undeniable hummed beneath their interactions. A held glance, a shared smile when someone else said something unintentionally amusing, the occasional touch when passing documents that lingered a fraction longer than necessary. Emma found herself looking forward to their meetings, dressing with slightly more care each morning, speaking up more confidently in discussions. The invisible analyst was becoming visible not just to Jackson but to everyone around her. Not all attention was positive, however. Whispers followed her through the hallways. Theories about her special treatment ranged from the merely speculative to the openly malicious. "Just ignore them," Danielle advised during a rare lunch break they managed to share. "They're jealous because you're actually being recognized for your work." "Are they, though?" Emma pushed her salad around her plate. "What if they're right? What if the only reason I'm on this team is because Jackson saw my photo and was, I don't know, intrigued? So what if that's how it started?" Danielle shrugged. "The point is, once you got in the room, you proved you belong there. Everyone knows the Meridian team is doing exceptional work, and you're a key part of that." Emma wasn't entirely convinced, but she had to admit the project itself was fulfilling in a way nothing in her career had been before. Her algorithms were at the heart of the security platform they were building. Her analysis had identified market opportunities the executives had missed. For the first time, she felt truly valued for her mind. The project reached its critical phase as the launch date approached. The team worked nearly around the clock, ordering in meals and surviving on the expensive espresso machine Jackson had installed in their dedicated conference room. During one particularly late night, Emma found herself alone with Jackson, both of them reviewing code on opposite sides of the table. "We should probably call it a night," he said eventually, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Fresh eyes in the morning." Emma nodded, too exhausted to argue, though her mind still raced with variables and scenarios. "I just want to finish this sequence." Jackson watched her for a moment. "You never stop, do you?" "Look who's talking," she replied with a small smile, not looking up from her screen. "Fair point." He chuckled, closing his laptop. "We're quite similar that way." The observation made her pause. "I've never thought of us as similar." "No?" He leaned back in his chair. "Driven, detail-oriented, happier solving problems than socializing, tendency to forget basic human needs like food and sleep when working." Emma finally looked up, meeting his gaze. "When you put it that way, I recognized myself in you," he said quietly. "Not just from the photo, though that was what made me look closer. In your work, your focus, your refusal to compromise on quality even when no one seemed to notice." The admission hung in the air between them, honest in a way that corporate interactions rarely were. Emma felt something shift in her understanding of their connection. "I should go," she said, suddenly needing space to process this revelation. Jackson nodded, respecting her retreat. "I'll walk you out." The parking garage was deserted at that late hour, their footsteps echoing in the concrete space. At Emma's car, Jackson hesitated. "Emma," he began, uncharacteristically uncertain, "I've been wanting to ask you." His phone chimed with the specific tone he'd designated for emergencies. Frowning, he checked the screen. "I have to take this," he said apologetically. "We'll talk tomorrow?" Emma nodded, equally relieved and disappointed by the interruption. Whatever he'd been about to ask would have to wait. The next morning brought chaos. A major security flaw had been discovered in the Meridian platform just days before the scheduled launch. The team gathered in emergency mode, executives pacing nervously as tech leads explained the potentially devastating vulnerability. "This could sink us entirely if it gets out." Richard Harmon, the chief security officer stated grimly. We need to push the launch back at least 2 months. That's not an option, Jackson replied, his expression tense. The investors are committed to the current timeline. Moving it would tank confidence and possibly our entire financing round. The team erupted in frantic discussion. Proposed solutions immediately shot down as insufficient or too time-consuming. Emma sat slightly apart, running calculations and scenarios on her laptop, tuning out the escalating argument. I might have something, she said finally, her quiet voice somehow cutting through the chaos. All heads turned toward her, expressions ranging from skeptical to desperate. Go ahead, Emma, Jackson encouraged, giving her his full attention. Emma explained her solution, a complex rerouting of the authentication protocols combined with an additional encryption layer. It wasn't perfect, but her models showed it would close the vulnerability without requiring a complete system overhaul. That could actually work, admitted Harmon reluctantly, but it would require rewriting key portions of the code immediately. I'll handle it, said Thomas Winters, the senior developer, already opening his laptop. I'll assist, Emma offered. I know exactly how the algorithm needs to be structured. For the next 36 hours, Emma barely left her desk, working alongside the development team to implement her solution. She subsisted on coffee and protein bars, losing track of time as she immersed herself in code and mathematical models. When she finally emerged, bleary-eyed but triumphant, the crisis had been averted. The vulnerability was patched, the system tested and secure once more. She should have been elated. Instead, exhaustion hit her like a physical blow as she made her way to the main conference room, where the team had gathered to assess their progress. She slipped in quietly, taking a seat at the back as Harmon was mid-presentation. Crisis successfully managed thanks to quick action from the development team, he was saying, gesturing to Thomas, who nodded appreciatively. Winter's solution was brilliantly implemented and we remain on schedule for Tuesday's launch. Emma stiffened. Winter's solution? She glanced at Thomas, who had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but made no move to correct the misattribution. Actually, Jackson's voice cut through the room. The solution came from Emma Winters. All eyes turned toward her, including Harmon's surprised gaze. Ms. Winters provided both the conceptual framework and the algorithmic structure, Jackson continued firmly. Thomas and his team executed it beautifully, but credit for the breakthrough belongs to Emma. The room fell silent. Emma felt a complex mixture of emotions, gratification at the recognition, embarrassment at being the center of attention, and something deeper, appreciation for Jackson's willingness to correct the record publicly. The meeting continued, but Emma barely registered the details. Afterward, as people filed out, Jackson approached her. You look exhausted, he said, genuine concern in his voice. You should go home and rest. Thank you, she replied quietly. For what you did in there, he shook his head. I only stated the truth. Your work deserves recognition. The simple validation struck deeper than Emma expected, touching a core insecurity she'd carried throughout her career. The fear that her contributions would always be invisible, absorbed into the broader team or credited to more prominent colleagues. Still, she insisted, not everyone would have spoken up. Jackson considered her for a moment. What I've learned over these weeks working closely with you, Emma, is that I want to be the kind of person who does speak up, who sees people clearly and values them accordingly. The words carried weight beyond their professional context. Emma felt the significance of what he was really saying, that she had changed him somehow just as he had changed her. I should go, she said, suddenly needing space to think. I haven't slept in. I don't even know how long. Of course, he stepped back, giving her room. But Emma, when this launch is behind us, I think we should talk about the future. She nodded, not trusting herself to respond verbally, and gathered her things to leave. Clarity, the Meridian project, launched flawlessly the following Tuesday. The business press hailed it as revolutionary. Investors doubled down on their commitments to Horizon. The company's stock jumped 18 points in a single day. Success brought a whirlwind of activities. Press conferences, celebratory events, executive meetings with potential clients. Through it all, Emma found herself unexpectedly centered in the narrative. Jackson had insisted she join him for key presentations, explicitly crediting her contributions. Her name appeared in press releases. Colleagues who had previously ignored her now sought her input and approval. It was disorienting. Emma had spent years cultivating professional invisibility, finding safety in being overlooked. Now she stood in the spotlight, her work publicly valued, her presence acknowledged. Part of her thrived in this new reality. Another part wondered what it would cost her. Most confusing of all was Jackson. Since the launch, their interactions had been purely